forum. We are going to maybe just give it one more minute and then go ahead and get started to let some other folks join. Okay, so I just want to welcome folks to the 2021 APA City Council Forum. Thank you to all of the folks who are joining us today and all of the lovely candidates who we will be hearing from. I want to especially give Joyce a big shout out because she's done so much work to get this organized and get the questions organized. So I'm really going to hand today's meeting over to Joyce and she's going to be leading us. So Joyce, if you'd like to take it away.
Okay, I think we had some very beginning things. So Karen, did you have an announcement from the Education Action Team?
Yes, well, it's not from the team. It's just I was asked to give one. This is, I'm going to read a statement so I can stay on the time. The Jeffco School Board elections in 2021 cover 3 districts. Number 1, which is in North Arvada and Westminster, 2, which is West Central Lakewood in the mountains, and 5 is the South. All voters vote in all 3 districts, 1 candidate in each district. The future of Jeffco schools is at stake because early indications are that the 2 announced slates represent very different educational approaches. The first slate includes Jeffrey White, Teresa Shelton, and Kathy Mix. Only the Mix website is available. Will Heights is under construction and Shelton's requires password entry. Mix writes that she believes kids need to learn the foundational basics to compete for the 21st century, and that parents are in the best position to determine what is best for their child. The slate has a large following among parents who are also advocating overturning the public health order related to masks in schools. The other slate includes Danielle Varda, Paula Reed, and Mary Parker. And their website writes that students deserve the best resources and support to recover from the pandemic and ensure a successful future. That includes the expansion of technical education, student internships, high quality math and reading programs, integrated arts, music, and physical activity in the curriculum, along with partnerships between educators and parents. Schools need to be adequately funded to ensure small class sizes and caseloads to meet our students' needs. Students deserve fully staffed schools with the best licensed educators and support professionals. A third candidate is running in District 2. His name is David Johnson. That's the district with Shelton and Reed. He writes that he plans to be a voice of reason in these challenging times and to stick to the mission of the Jefferson County School District of helping children achieve a safe and healthy education so they can live a great life. I strongly urge everyone to study these 7 candidates, attend informational sessions, and read available online resources. APA surveys are out to candidates now, and Bruce will post responses as surveys return. Just a quick reminder, ballots drop October the 8th. Election day is November 2nd. I'm going to post this recap in our group, Facebook group. So thank you very much.
Okay. And do we have any other action team reports? Mindy, do you have one?
Yes, just very briefly, our affordable housing team, we meet quarterly with staff from the city of Arvada. We are advocating for affordable and attainable housing, not just rental units, but for sale to allow people to buy homes, whether they're starter homes or seniors who want to downsize, building of smaller homes so that people can start building equity in the home ownership process, not just renting. So we're strong advocates for that. There's a number of things going on in the city. Some are very exciting. If you are not a member of the team and don't get the emails, please, you're more than welcome to join, get our emails, get information. I will put my email address in the chat box now. Thank you.
Bruce, do you have?
Yeah, Bruce Morrison, I'm with the anti-war action team. As we've witnessed the spectacular failure of militarism in Afghanistan, spectacular and tragic. Now is the time to really convince people that militarism has failed, and we need to reduce military spending so we can have resources to deal with COVID, infrastructure, and other important issues. I will go ahead and put my email in the chat, and if you want to help us out, we'd appreciate anybody that wants to help us get the word out about ending militarism. Yeah. Thank you.
Taylor, did you have anything for environment?
Not really. We have a committee that meets sporadically. At the current time, we're meeting when we have a good speaker. So our last speaker was several individuals who are speaking on behalf of saving our skies, specifically concerned about the leaded gasoline used in personal aircraft and the amount of traffic. Previous to that, we had a presentation by the city of Arvada on water issues. So we try and be informative and non-controversial.
Okay. Does anybody else have an action team report? Okay. If we don't, then we're just going to dive right in and start our forum. And again, I'm Joyce Richardson. I'm the chair of the political action team. And what I've been doing this last several months now is developing the questions that we sent out to City Council, getting those back and posted on our website, and putting together this forum. I want to thank Taylor for being our timer today and Brian for being our doorkeeper. That makes things a lot easier on me. So thank you very much. And as you know, we're recording a session. And so if you don't want your face to show, I guess you can blank it out. We do want the candidates to stay, however. So I'm just going to explain the rules here real quick. The candidates will be called on for a 2-minute self-introduction or opening statement, and that's determined by alphabetical last name and the race that you're in. So at large or District 1 or District 2. There'll be 4 questions, I think, asked to start the forum, which have been submitted by APA members and edited by the leadership team. Each candidate will have 90 seconds to answer. Your mic will be turned off if you go past that time. I will ask a different candidate to answer the question first so that not the same person has to start each question. Candidates did receive these questions ahead of time, so they had a chance to prepare their answers. There won't be any rebuttal time. And the audience here today can submit questions into the chat. So once we're done with our questions, our 5 questions, I see John's joined us now, then we'll ask as many as we can after that. So we have, if you'll just wave, we have Michael Griffith and Lisa Smith in district or at large. We have Randy Mormon in District 1, and Chelsea Kanda, I think, is not going to join us today. I think she's chosen not to participate. And then in District 3, we have John Marriott and Susie Shuckman. So again, you'll have 2 minutes to introduce yourself and do your opening statement. And we'll start with Michael Griffith for the at-large.
Okay, Joyce, thank you very much. And thank you everybody for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to get in front of a group in a nonpartisan setting and tell you a little bit more about myself. I'd like to start off by saying, and recognizing this is the 20th anniversary of September 11th, an event we would do well to always remember and never forget. With that being said, I'll go ahead and get started. I'm originally from South Louisiana. I moved to Colorado in 2010, and I moved to Arvada in 2014. I'm currently the vice chair of the Planning Commission, and I'm a licensed landscape architect and urban designer with 12 years of experience designing urban places for people. I work at a company called Stantec, where I lead a team of about 30 to 40 engineers, architects, interior designers, and landscape architects on innovative green infrastructure projects across the country, but mostly here in the Front Range. I'm a LEED accredited professional, and I'm responsible in my company for doing all the documentation for our LEED buildings. One of the best examples is probably South Sloan's Lake, which has just been finished. I am running because I believe that council should have a design voice to address growth in an adequate way that will lead us into the future. And the decisions we make in the next 4 years are absolutely critical in that vein. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Now, Lisa, if you would introduce yourself.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for allowing me the chance to speak with you, and also for your passion in making the world we live in a better place. I started off my day attending the Firefighters 9/11 Memorial, and just wanted to take a second and recognize the impact and sacrifice that we've all made over the past 20 years. So let's get started. I'm Lisa Smith. I'm running for Arvada City Council at large. I've always been a service-driven leader thanks to my immigrant mother turned public school teacher, and my social work father who served the mentally ill and families. As a veteran social worker and emergency responder, I've had the honor of serving our country and our nation in a very unique way. From responding to floods, fires, pandemics, to finding housing and expanding resources for our older adults, students, and disabled neighbors. Through my experiences, I've been able to work on some of the most complex challenges our community's been facing, specifically around housing, mental health, safety, and climate. I've been able to roll out new pilot projects that tackle aging in place, community resiliency, and affordable housing, as well as fostering new partnerships that increase the quality of our life. We need this type of background, leadership, and experience on council. We need leaders that can think creatively, innovatively, and inclusively. We need servant leaders that have a history of stepping up and working alongside their community. Ones that will be there for you and advocate for those voices that are not often heard. I hope to bring my motivated yet compassionate lens, as well as a ground level experience to the policy table. But I need your support in November. So if I don't have your support yet, please reach out and we'll keep the conversation going. But I look forward to answering your questions and getting to know each other. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we're going to go to Randy Mormon next.
Good afternoon. Thank you, APA, for hosting this very important forum. My name is Randy Mormon, and I'm a candidate for Arvada City Council District 1. Today, as we've been noting, is 9/11, and I want to take a moment to remember the lives lost in this day 20 years ago, and the courageous men and women who fought the terrorists on the planes and risked their lives and lost their lives trying to save others. I remember that day very well. I was working in Washington, D.C. and was in my office when I first learned of the Twin Towers in New York and then the attack on the Pentagon. Throughout my career as a scientist, teacher, and now a nonprofit recycler, I have worked hard to bring people together to solve problems and find solutions, from setting up an after-school youth program in Albuquerque, working with the state legislature here in Colorado, to create a recycling grant program that has actually resulted in Arvada receiving $500,000 for recycle carts, and most recently setting up a COVID vaccine clinic at my church. So I'm running to give back to my community that has been there and supported me. We have to harness that same kind of spirit of unity that we had after 9/11 to address the challenges we face here in Arvada, from the pandemic, rising housing costs, and climate change. I will target city resources to invest in our residents and small businesses to ensure that everyone feels safe, is healthy, and economically secure. We also have to come together as a community and combat climate change. Last summer and this summer, our quality of life has been threatened with smoke. And we have a responsibility not just to ourselves, but to our children and their children. So I want to work together with you to create solutions that will not only reduce our climate impact, but also create more opportunities through new green businesses, jobs, and services. I want to work for you, be your voice on Arvada City Council. So I ask for your support and your vote. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Randy. Next we have John Marriott.
Hey, thank you. So my name is John Marriott. I am the current representative for Arvada City Council District 3. I was very fortunate. I grew up in Arvada, got to attend Jefferson County schools. I attended Sierra Elementary School, Oberon Junior High, and graduated from Pomona High School. Was a young man, as I was attending the University of Colorado, I had the opportunity to buy a small business that I was working in, and did so, and have spent 38 years now building my business, Larson Ski and Sport, in our community. And it's really been a great place to be, and a great life. As ski bums go, I think I've done pretty well. I was, as I say, first elected in 2013. I was reelected in 2017, and I'm running for my third term here in 2021. I have a philosophy of local government that's really based on local government is there to do certain things. And in my actions on city council, I have tried to limit our actions to those things that we are there to do. My philosophy is that we should do an excellent job of those things. And only when and if we are doing a superior job of those things should we delve into anything that doesn't belong in our core responsibilities. I'm running for really 3 reasons this time. I think our safe community is at peril. Crime is up all across the metro area. This isn't necessarily just an Arvada problem, but it is going to take an Arvada solution. We also have infrastructure needs throughout the city, both in our water, sewer, as well as our road infrastructure. And now more than ever, with the changes brought to us by the last year and a half, our business climate is important. So those are the things I will be focusing on as I go forward. I'd like to add one more note. I unfortunately, and I may be the only one, I did not receive the questions ahead of time. So my answers may be just winging it. So I appreciate that you guys sent the questions out ahead of time. However, I wasn't fortunate enough to receive them, but that's okay. I'm fine with it. So thank you very much for having me, and I look forward to answering some questions once I find out what they are. Thank you.
Sorry about that, John. It didn't bounce back, so I had no knowledge that you didn't get them. Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's okay. It is no problem. I like surprises. These will be fun surprises.
Okay. All right, Susie.
Thank you so much, Joyce. And thank you to all the members of APA for hosting this opportunity today. It's a pleasure to visit with all of you. I'm Susie Schuckman. I'm running for Arvada City Council, District 3. I am originally from Kansas City, Missouri, but as a brief New Yorker, today certainly holds a special place in my heart as well. And something that compares, I mean, if you can imagine comparing Arvada to New York City, is the sense of community and the sense of resiliency. So I do want to acknowledge and thank especially the Arvada Fire Department for hosting such a lovely memorial service this morning. Again, Susie Schuckman, running for Arvada City Council. And I'm running because I honestly know what the average Arvadan and what their experience on a day-to-day basis is because of struggles trying to attain affordable housing or attainable housing as a first-time home buyer and someone who's looking to invest in the future of this community. It's something I myself struggle with. I am also very passionate about moving forward with how are we proactively investing in sustainable and climate forward thinking ways to preserve our parks and green spaces. And I've heard time and again from neighbors, a woman has recently broke down and cried on my shoulder, describing the struggles her family has experienced here in our community with trying to attain mental health services. And last but not least, one of the most important things that I hope to bring to the table come November is a really strong voice that will advocate for equitable and inclusive voices here in Arvada. As someone who's lived that day-to-day life of knowing what it means to rent, of knowing what it means to have student loans, of struggling to be a part of this community, I'm proud to say that when I moved here, I was able to find ways to dive right in. I dove right in and started digging plots at the Arvada Gardeners. I was proudly volunteering with the Arvada Center. I definitely enjoy the performing arts and support all that they do. But what I will bring to the table, besides a compassionate and empathetic ear, is the ability to elevate smart choices that I've.
Time.
Okay. We're going to shake it up a little bit as we start the questions. Randy, since you're kind of the only one here from District 1, we're going to start with question 1 for you. Arvada has the cheapest water rates among our Front Range neighbors. Climate change is going to make water an even more precious commodity throughout the West. Do you support a more aggressive city approach to encourage water conservation If so, what steps would you support? And how would you help the citizens of Arvada get there?
Thank you, Joyce, for the great question. So climate change is happening now, and we as a community must prepare, especially when it comes to our water. Warming temperatures increase the odds of worsening drought. My husband and I got married and lived in Hawaii before moving to Colorado. And we are hearing from our friends now there that they are facing severe water rationing, fines up to $500 for non-essential activities like watering lawns and washing cars. We don't want that to happen here. But we are not immune to drought in Colorado, and we have a responsibility to ourselves and our kids to conserve water to ensure that we have a healthy supply today and well into the future. We all learn at an early age that water is essential to survive, keep us healthy, and grow our food. So we do need to do more to encourage water conservation, and I will advocate for setting water conservation goals, holding developers accountable to those goals, as well as developing a drought plan for the city so that we are prepared and more resilient. We need to be proactive as a city and encourage and incentivize residents and businesses through rebates and assistance programs to transform lawns to beautiful xeric landscaping, eliminate leaks inside homes and outside, and help businesses and residents install water efficient appliances. Water conservation is not only good for the environment, but is also good for the pocketbook, reducing water utility bills. So the time is now for us to act on water conservation more than ever. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think we'll go with Michael next.
Thanks, Joyce.
I noticed that the blue sky timer microphone is off. Is that why we didn't hear any whoops or? Come on. Sorry.
Oh, can you reset that timer, Taylor?
Let me know when you guys want me to go. Thanks.
Okay, I think we're ready.
Okay, excellent. Yes, no, I'm glad you asked this question. Water obviously is critical here. Water is life here in the high desert. So it's certainly something that's on my mind as a stormwater implementation specialist and professional with Stantec. We look at this all the time. We don't just look at it through a lens of conservation, though. We look at it through the lenses of capture and treatment, which is upstream. What I would like to see is I'd like us to see a world in Arvada where we get more out of each of our infrastructure dollar investments. If we're going to build a roadway or we're going to build some stormwater drainage infrastructure, we should get double duty out of that. We should get the infiltration and the cleaning. We should also get public amenity out of it. Make it a little bit more publicly accessible so people understand that stormwater runoff and treatment actually leads to our ability to collect water and ultimately have more water resources that we can then also conserve. So low water use plants, also essential. One thing to keep in mind here is that overall, our fiscally conservative water budget approach over the last several years has led to a massive surplus in funding. So Arvada is positioned uniquely among the Front Range cities, and that our water prices are cheap, as you say in your question. We don't want to end up like Westminster, where they don't look closely at water as a holistic effort, right? From treatment, capture, all the way to conservation and use. Their water bills are through the roof. They're easily 4 times what ours are now. So cheap, inexpensive water into the future to make sure housing and living and cost of life are not explosive in nature, but at the same time, we keep an eye on this as a holistic approach. Thank you.
Okay, and Lisa, you'll be next.
All right. I'm looking for the timer.
I think, yeah.
All right, we're good. So yes, each person uses about 100 gallons of water a day on average, and that doesn't include our outdoor water use. Our water use will exceed our current supply, and we are overwhelming our antiquated water system. We need to take a 2-step approach here within the city to promote efficient water usage. First, we need to expand our community education and the importance of water conservation. There are programs like WaterSense through the EPA that provides tools and resources to help cities in educating and engaging the community, and that's all for free. Second, we need to build up on our city programs like our smart water sensor and meters. That is also completely free to the residents. It's something the city is actually rolling out with the goal of getting it to every household by 2024. This device looks at leaks and notifies residents of their water usage on the property. So let's expand on this and promote trade-in programs for efficient toilets, showers, faucets. We can kickstart this with grants through programs like the Land and Water Conservation Fund and the Colorado Water Plans grants. Clearly, my overall strategy around innovative ideas is to leverage partnerships and existing programs and their funds. Lastly, on a city level, our parks can be better about water conservation by using native plants that also double down as defensible spaces when fires come through. All right, I'm done. Oh wait, no, I'm done. I got 7 seconds. Additionally, we could be smarter about our water use, like shifting to morning or evening watering schedules.
Okay.
Lisa, do you have a timer, or is that supposed to show up on the screen? Because I didn't see a timer.
It's one of the videos, Mike.
Timer, it should have a.
The timer should be showing up as the first view. If you set to a gallery view, you should see the timer in the upper left-hand corner. Now, I'm hearing sounds. I don't know if other people are not hearing sounds.
I'm not hearing sounds, and I'm seeing the microphone is off, is muted.
I don't show that. Why don't you try unmuting and see if you can? Are other people hearing the sounds?
I'm hearing people's children, Taylor. I think that's what it is.
Okay, so Michael, are you the only ones that cannot see the timer?
I think Randy also is having trouble seeing the timer. I just switched it to gallery view, so I'm thinking that should help it. Let's see here.
Yeah, I can't see a timer either, but that's fine. I don't need one.
If you scroll down, scroll down on the gallery view until you get to it, you'll see, I see a blue sky.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Got it, thanks.
Okay, next up, I think we'll go to John Marriott.
Hey, thank you. So the question's about should Arvada have a more aggressive water conservation plan, I think was the question you asked. Again, since I didn't get these ahead of time, I'm winging it here, but let me just make a couple comments. So one, having the least expensive water in our area is a good thing. We have a number of people in our community that are on the margins. And every time we impact them negatively financially, we make all of their life worse. This single source trash hauling with a fee to not do business with the with the city's contractor hurts people. That's harmful to people. And I think raising water rates without the necessity of doing it also hurts people. And I would not be for that. I think we have to be careful with the people on the margins. But there are things we can do. I really look at this in 4 pieces. There's the actions the city can take. And should the city as an organization conserve more water? The answer is yes, they should. I think we should always be looking at that. And we have a sustainability advisory committee that I would hope is doing some of that stuff. We also have our development standards, and I believe we should continually look at that and strike a balance. Okay, I guess I'm done. I hear a horn going off. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, John. And last we have Susie, the same question.
Great, thanks, Joyce. So we as a city and a state know we have to preserve, conserve, protect, and manage our water resources diligently. The current city strategic plan steers far clear of saying the words conservation, which as a resident deeply concerns me. The city embraces federally mandated components of how to treat our waterways and water systems, but one of the things I've heard from residents and from my neighbors is that doesn't reflect the approach we have to take in order to preserve the future of clean water here in Arvada. So as the city council representative, I would make a few suggestions on how we could address this immediately. I would like to empower our resident-led sustainability advisory committee to research and assess the possible areas of improvement we need here in Arvada to focus on. Next, I would like to work with the residents of District 3 and all of Arvada to identify key community experts, like many of you on this call, who I'd like to elevate to participate as further representation of Arvada at the state level through the Metro Basin Roundtable, which is a part of the Colorado Water Conservation Board. Through this conservation board, Arvada should be first in line as an applicant for the water supply fund that was recently awarded a $20 million state stimulus in June. And lastly, I will ensure your city council works diligently with city staff, subject matter experts, and the CWCB. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, the second question that we have is, in the past several years, it seems there have been more officer-involved shootings, most recent being a woman with a knife who was shot and killed. Are you concerned about the use of deadly force with no accountability from body cameras? How will you address the seeming lack of transparency from the police department? And we will go to Michael Griffith first for this one.
Thank you, Joyce. Much appreciated. Yes, absolutely. This question, is a good question. I am concerned. I'm concerned about the violence toward police officers. Over the summer, we saw a man walked into Old Town Arvada with the expressed intent to kill a police officer, and he was successful in that. I think this is something we should absolutely be looking at. Why are criminals in Arvada on the rise, and why are we seeing more of these instances in the last couple of years? I'd also like to state that, we have SB 19217, which is, going to be the forceful compliance through the entire state for every municipality to have a body camera by the year 2023. In 2022, Arvada will have ours a year ahead of schedule. There's an entire website that's dedicated to police accountability, then all of the sort of special recruitment tactics, non-bias trainings, everything that our police officers go through to ensure that we have professional services provided. I'd also like to state, in 2014, there was a study that was done by the Arvada PD that looked at body cameras as a potential use in Arvada. And they found that, these body cameras do have their use, and mostly it's in police precincts that have already an existing issue with their public and constituents. And so they felt that that wasn't the best use of their resources. So they'll be in compliance. We'll look at grant funding and other options to make sure they can get their body cameras. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and next we'll have Lisa.
All right.
Okay.
So, having worked in austere environments through my emergency response and policing background, as well as working with mentally ill clients as a social worker, I have a unique perspective on this, and I feel it's missing on council, and it's imperative to have, especially right now. I'm always concerned about aggressive policing when responding to emergent calls, but also recognize the heightened level of stress and fear that comes with responding to these calls. I recall my training as a police officer being directed towards eliminating the threat more so than de-escalation. And that is something that we need to adjust the balance of training and response styles. I support adding body cameras to our police force, and we can afford it as our city. In addition to body cameras, I would promote police transparency and community relationships by supporting programs like a citizen review board, similarly to what I've witnessed in Fort Collins, and it has been very successful. We also need to expand community engagement through our sector-based meetings, online forums, and have a more proactive sharing system. I'll give you 23 seconds back.
Those beeps are really jarring. Is there any way to make them a little more subtle?
Can you all see the timer now?
Yes, definitely.
Then you probably could turn the middle one off if you can, Taylor. Okay, the next person to answer the question will be Susie. And that's the question about the police accountability.
Is the timer going? Perfect. All right. So this is an incredibly complicated issue and something that we've all been impacted by here in Arvada as of late. I want to ensure our police officers have the protection of body cameras and that it's made a priority through our department and able to demonstrate clear transparency to our community. As your city council representative, I want to ensure we are equipping our officers with all of the tools to ensure their safety as well as yours. Making body cameras, along with the most sophisticated training opportunities in equity and inclusivity available to our officers, will ensure we provide a competitive workforce for them and make sure they feel supported by the city of Arvada. When on council, I'll advocate to invest in these resources that will demonstrate how effective and inclusive our department truly is. I am also a strong advocate of implementing programs such as the Support Team Assisted Response Program that our neighbors down in Denver have been so successful with this past year. Denver Public Health and Environment is expanding the support team at a very rapid pace, as it has been piloted for just over a year now. The STAR program, if those of you that aren't familiar with it, deploys emergency response teams that include emergency medical technicians, behavioral health clinicians, and folks who can actually help solve a mental health crisis and get those in peril some resources while not putting our officers in danger. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and John Marriott, do you want me to repeat the question?
Yeah, if you would. I had technical difficulties and was missing there for a minute.
Okay. In the past several years, it seems there have been more officer-involved shootings, the most recent being a woman with a knife who was shot and killed. Are you concerned about the use of deadly force with no accountability from body cameras? How will you address the seeming lack of transparency from the police department?
Okay, so I guess I would take some a little bit of difference with the question. So the recent officer-involved shooting wasn't a woman with a knife. It was a woman with a car trying to run a police officer over, and he used his weapon to appropriately defend himself. That's certainly being investigated as part of the multi-jurisdictional critical incident team, and they will return their findings, and the Jefferson County District Attorney will make a determination about whether that shooting was proper or improper. And all the proper actions will be taken. That if that was improperly done, that officer would be prosecuted for that. If it's properly done, then they acted appropriately given what their job is. So just want to be clear on that. This was not an officer shooting a woman with a knife. Am I concerned about the violence? Darn right, I'm concerned about the violence. You know, in Arvada, we typically have about 1 murder per 100,000 people per year. Last year, we had 8 times what we normally have. That's a significant problem. Now, there's good and bad to that 8. The good news to it is that all 8 of them none of them were random. They were all people who knew each other. Most of them were as a result of drug transactions, and they were associates who decided to shoot each other. Also, the good news is our officers have, all of them, a suspect in every single one. But yes, I'm very concerned about the violence.
Okay. Thank you very much. And Randy, you're next.
Great, thank you, Joyce. So the question about police-involved shootings, it is on the rise across the country, and Black, Indigenous, and people of color victims, whether armed or unarmed, have significantly higher death rates than whites. And that is just not okay. My husband and I have had 2 BIPOC foster teens and in our home who both feared the police because of their previous experiences with them. And in particular, I remember my son trembling in the car when a police car would just pass us on the road. And this is because he had experienced police using force in his previous home. So no one, regardless of their race, should fear going to work or school. So I think to make our community safe, we must increase the public's trust in our police and at the same time, provide our police with resources to protect themselves and our community. No question about that. A policing model based on force alone does not rebuild community trust and only creates more problems and more crime. Our police must treat everyone with respect and act in an unbiased and consistent way. So I support looking at several tools to increase accountability that we've seen that are very effective in other communities, including body cameras, including sending only mental health workers, social workers, and substance abuse counselors respond to nonviolent 911 calls, and creating a citizen advisory committee. These tools have reduced the use of force and other communities, and everyone should feel safe in Arvada.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, our next question is the recent HB 1176 task force findings show that a universal single-payer healthcare system is the most cost-effective system and would save the state's citizenry between $1 billion and $4 billion. In the past, the council has been asked to sign a resolution supporting universal healthcare. In light of these recent findings, would you sign a resolution? And if not, why not? And we'll start with Susie.
Thanks, Joyce. If anything, this past year has taught us all so much about the importance of physical and mental health, and I align these two as one and the same. I'm in full support of providing Arvada residents with all of the necessary services they need to protect and keep their families safe and healthy. Arvadans recognize that the future of this community is tied to our well-being, and my family firsthand understands the heavy burdens that medical debt can carry. When you look at the culture of our community, we see that our neighbors want to be supportive of one another. At the end of the day, if there is an opportunity for Arvadans to be there for one another, we show up. I see this as a direct correlation to healthcare and providing at some point the efficiency and security that would come with a single payer system. I, not being a healthcare expert, I understand that there are so many variables that go into identifying the best path forward regarding such a shift in how we as a community currently provide healthcare. I myself am very realistic that this isn't going to be an overnight shift. It will take years, even decades, to provide this type of care. I'm also very encouraged, though, by seeing that how we as a community can band together. For example, seeing that over 72% of adults in Jefferson County are now fully vaccinated is incredibly encouraging. And I think that that speaks volumes to our willingness, to our community wanting to step up and take care of each other as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And John, would you like me to read the question again?
Yes, if you would, please. Thank you,
Okay.
Joyce.
The recent HB 1176 task force, which was tasked with looking at 3 different kinds of healthcare coverage for people. Their findings show that a universal single-payer healthcare system is the most cost-effective system and would save the state's citizenry between $1 billion and $4 billion. In the past, the City Council has been asked to sign a resolution supporting a universal single-payer healthcare system. In light of these findings, would you sign a resolution supporting a state healthcare system? And if not, why not?
Thank you. So I absolutely would not. I believe any type of a resolution like that would be only symbolic at the very, very most for a couple reasons. One, the city doesn't do healthcare. We have no activity with individuals' healthcare in the city at all. City also has absolutely no jurisdiction when it comes to healthcare matters. That's expressly reserved for the states and the federal government, and that's where those things belong. I believe any individual who wants to advocate for any one or another particular outcome should absolutely do that. That's how our system of government works. But for the Arvada City Council as an organization to pluck one particular solution from a possible hat full of possibilities and advocate as a group, as an organization for that would be wrong, because we have no jurisdiction there. I'll note one more thing about HB 1176. That was a completely partisan bill, had not one vote from anybody from the other side. And so it's far from being definitive on the subject. Is politics at the state level, which really doesn't belong in city government. City government is about the day-to-day things that are important to people in their regular lives. And partisan state politics is not one of them. So no, I would absolutely not.
Okay, thank you. Randy, you're next.
Great, thank you. Well, I will start by saying rising healthcare costs affect us all. And after an example, this is after my husband's stroke, the out-of-pocket costs for his medications alone went up to a little over $1,000 a month. That is a big shock to our finances. And these higher costs mean we are saving less for retirement and for our kids' college education and for many other things. These higher costs also mean that employers are reducing wage increases, requiring employers to pay more for their insurance, and charging and changing insurance programs altogether. Just in the past year, I've had to change my primary care physician 3 times because my employer had to change insurance programs. So I am very worried about our retirement as healthcare costs continue to eat up our savings. Our current system is unsustainable. So I do support a universal healthcare and would sign a resolution supporting a single payer state healthcare system. I would want to make sure that the new system would still have a choice in doctors and we would continue to get high quality care. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Lisa?
Awesome, thank you. So as someone that has used the socialized healthcare system, which is the VA, having used the socialized healthcare system in over 4 different countries, I very much appreciate having healthcare and having a socialized healthcare medicine model, but it certainly does have its challenges. One of the biggest challenges of only having one option can be that there is significant wait time and the quality of service and accountability. For example, when I wanted to start therapy at the VA, the soonest that I could be seen was 3 months, as opposed to going to Cigna and being seen that same week. I spent 2 years of my master's degree researching the VA healthcare system, exploring public and privatization models, and I fully support a hybrid healthcare system model. That means universal healthcare while also allowing private and supplemental healthcare insurance options for those that want it. This would save millions of dollars in emergency room visits and increase more preventative care. That being said, healthcare is a complex issue and tackling it is out of the reach of City Council, and I wouldn't feel comfortable signing a resolution on an issue that is outside our role, scope, and expertise on council.
Okay, thank you very much. I was reading the chat, sorry. Okay, and Michael.
Thank you. Yeah, so this one, like you've heard from some of the other candidates, this is personal for me as a new dad, and having a kid just 3 years before that. It costs around $10,000 now to go through the process of having a child. Absolutely incredibly expensive. And I'm happy that state legislators are looking at this issue and trying to research it. I do agree that it has been sort of a partisan effort, but I'm glad we're looking at it at the state level. I feel personally that this is something that's well outside of the scope and the expertise of City Council. I would not support a bill like this, and I think that this question and sort of some of the responses to it highlight one of the issues in local government where people misunderstand what local government's actually responsible for and what our overall scope of services is to be. So no, I wouldn't support it, but I'm glad state legislators are looking at this issue. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, another question. We'll start with Lisa. What factors do you consider as you look at development requests for the city of Arvada? NIMBY is something we often hear when an area bands together to oppose a particular development. Some opposition is successful and some not. What tips the balance in your mind?
Thank you for that question. There are 6 key factors that council considers when looking at developments, and I'll drop it in the chat because I'm limited on time for this answer. The most common concern that I am hearing when I'm knocking on doors is around the potential impact on our infrastructure, specifically our roads. There is already significant congestion in Arvada and over $7 million in backlog and road repairs for our city. For new developments, I would focus on the impact it would have on our roads, water, and sewer systems. We cannot add new housing if we cannot accommodate for the addition of the people, or if the developers cannot mitigate that challenge. So that is something I really want to focus on when we're looking at these new developments. To tackle this, I'd like to see us incorporating more roundabouts over streetlights to promote a more continuous flow of vehicles. as well as adding bike lanes and connecting them with our existing bike trail systems and promoting alternative transportation methods. Additionally, there's clearly a desire for developments to stay consistent with the surrounding properties. New revisions to the Land Development Code created a significant jump from some single-family homes to medium and higher density properties. I think we should revisit some of those changes and ensure those jumps are not too high and out of the scope of the area to ensure it stays consistent with the surrounding areas while also promoting that housing diversity and affordability.
Thank you very much. And next we'll go to Michael.
Thank you very much. Yeah, this is a great question, and it's something that we encounter all the time on Planning Commission. So over the last 5 years, we've seen a lot of projects that come through, and people are very upset, for different reasons. And I'll tell you, in my professional career, we see this all the time. Sometimes I'm on the other side of the fence saying, hey, this development is good, let's do some public outreach. And then we have to explain that to staff and city council in other municipalities. So I've certainly seen that. And I know in community meetings, usually the people that come out are very upset about a particular item. On council, on Planning Commission, we have a set list of criteria that we have to go by. We have an approval criteria. We have the Land Development Code to fall back on. The comprehensive plan is, aspirational document. We have to tie our opinions to something. We can't just say we feel this is a bad development. And that happens usually based on material facts that are either presented by the staff, or sometimes we see material facts come from people that actually attend the meetings. And that's where you have sort of the swaying difference between some projects that the community has issues with and they come out to our meetings and they don't get approved, and some that do. We're looking for those material facts. There's a lot of effort and planning that go into these documents that council has put together, city staff, and ultimately city manager. Those documents are so critical to guiding growth, and material facts matter when making these decisions. Thank you.
Thank you. And next we'll go to Susie.
All right, thanks, Joyce. So regarding development in Arvada, we know that this is a touchy subject for all of us, right? And I've heard that the need for more equitable distribution of this is a high priority for District 3. This means working with developers who are willing to provide more than the bare minimum of affordable options. This means empowering residents to have a greater voice than they currently have and to get involved in the process earlier. What will tip the balance regarding development for most people is, will this provide an equitable opportunity for all Arvadans? Will this impact the future of our communities? Does this particular project make sense for the residents of District 3? What long-term impacts will this have on infrastructure? Do we see this as a collaborative effort among residents, the city of Arvada, and the developer? And is the process transparent? That is a consistent question I have been hearing from our neighbors throughout the community of transparency. That's something they wish to see more of. We see every day how quickly our neighbor Denver has become the second most gentrified city in the country. This represents a lack of resident input on all fronts. As the Arvada City Council representative for District 3, I want to ensure residents are on the forefront of these conversations and well informed.
Thank you very much. Next, we'll go to John.
Thanks, Joyce. So questions about NIMBYism in our community with regard to developments. And I'll just bring up a couple points. When developments are proposed, the developer has to provide evidence and information sufficient that they can be handled by our existing infrastructure, or they have to upgrade that infrastructure. So the question about, are we allowing development that our infrastructure can't support is not true. We always are. Next one is, we have criteria to go by. We have a land development code and criteria that we judge developments by. The fit with the rest of the community is one of those criteria. However, there's a balance there between allowing residents more say. That is what NIMBYism is, when residents around it get to say what happens there. That's exactly what not in my backyard means. So I think there's quite a balance to be developed there between taking the opinions of residents around and applying those to the fit within the area, but also relying on the criteria that's well established within our land development code as those decisions are made. And I feel like I've always done that and will continue to do that.
Okay, thank you very much. And Randy.
Great, thanks, Joyce. So we really have to be smart about development. We have to have a vision for how we manage the demand for growth in our city. And every day as I drive Scott to work or we go to the grocery store, I feel the strain of more traffic, and I'm sure you all do. I also love my neighborhood. It's quiet, kids can play together in our front yards, on the sidewalks, and ride their bikes on the street. So we have to protect that. That's what makes Arvada Arvada. And so I think we need to reevaluate our approach to development. We need to make sure that we are setting the right priorities and standards through our planning and zoning. We have to plan for the future, ensuring we have enough water, ensuring we can maintain our existing infrastructure like our roads and reduce traffic with better public transportation options. We have to look at development through a climate and air pollution lens by setting goals and holding developers accountable to those goals. Developers must design projects that fit within our existing neighborhoods and make them stronger. Do they enhance the quality of our life? I firmly believe we must approach development with transparency and expand community input. Neighbors of a proposed project need to be involved from the beginning, not at the end of the process when it looks like everything has been approved. The community should have a say in our goals and expectations for what comes next. And with clear standards based on community input, we can better hold development accountable to our shared vision.
Okay, thank you, Randy. Okay, I would just like to remind people who are attending, if you have questions after this last question that I ask, you can put it in the chat. And if we have time, we will ask that question of our candidates. So our last question, and John, you will start. 81% of the Arvada workforce live outside of our city, and 1/3 of that number are in low-paying service industry jobs. They have to commute, causing increased stress on our streets and air quality. How will you help create more affordable homes and rentals in North and West Arvada, where there is no public transportation right now?
Joyce, do you mind repeating that question? I guess I don't understand what question you're asking there.
Sure. So 81% of the Arvada workforce lives outside of our city. And 1/3 of that number are in low-paying jobs. So they have to come into the city to work. They have to commute, causing increased stress on our streets and air quality. How will you help create more affordable homes and rentals in North and West Arvada? Because we have Aura that I think has been directed to have more affordable housing kind of over at this end, the western end or the eastern end of the city. But the North and West end doesn't have those funds. So how will you help find more affordable rentals and maybe homes to buy in the North and West part of Arvada?
Yes, it's quite a scattered stream of
Yes, I guess it is.
consciousness is a question there, but let me try that stat is true, which I don't know that I believe it is, that 81% of the people who work in Arvada come from outside of Arvada. That's actually quite a good thing for Arvada. That's a good statistic that shows that we have a very viable business climate. And I will do everything I can to maintain that viable business climate. Most suburbs, especially first-ring suburbs like ours, most people leave our suburb to go work elsewhere. So that's quite good. Second thing I think you're asking is what will we do for more affordable housing? I believe we'll do what we continue to do, which is to cooperate with developers who decide to bring affordable housing tax credits with them to do a project in Arvada. I think We should cooperate with them. We should help them along. However, I don't believe we should allow them to build something that's different than the market would build. I think the people who live in affordable housing development shouldn't be stigmatized by where they live, nor should they have to live on live some way different. There's also kind of a conundrum in this question, because the question says more affordable housing in the north and west where we have no public transportation. I would think we want affordable housing in the places we do have public transportation, so that those residents can be served by public transportation if they're really so low income that they can't afford a car. So seems a little scattered, but I guess I would do what we've always done.
Okay, thank you, John. Next, we'll have Susie.
Thanks, Joyce. So my background of serving nonprofits for the past 15 years provides me with a really unique insight to the daily struggles of those who rely on public transportation and those who do serve in our lower income positions throughout the city of Arvada. People should be able to afford to live and work in the same community. It shouldn't be an either or situation. Finding solutions regarding attainable housing for all hardworking families in Arvada is one of the main reasons I'm interested in serving as the District 3 City Council representative. Providing not just affordable, but attainable homes is a priority for residents in District 3 and across all of Arvada, including the North and West section. We have not only a shortage of attainable homes here in our community, but across the region, and now certainly across the country. The city needs to be prioritizing incentivizing developers that will create more equitable housing strategies that includes the voices of residents to ensure all Arvadans are heard. The kind of free market hands-off approach is not a way of equitably serving all residents. I would like to implement two different ways that we could move forward. I see us turning towards more of a community trust option that will guide a reasonable and inclusive distribution of resources and land. Also, utilizing regional programs to find solutions for families that are under-resourced or first-time home buyers is going to be a great opportunity once we have the inventory for them to buy.
Thank you. Randy, you're next.
Great, thank you. So my son actually had to move to Aurora because he couldn't afford to live in Arvada. I have seen firsthand how hard it is for working people to live and get around in our city. And with COVID especially, I became aware of how important our frontline essential workers are. Our community relies on these people, but they're not making minimum wage. Most cannot afford to live in Arvada. The rising cost of housing affects all of us, whether you're a family looking for your first home or a senior wanting to downsize. We really have to take a holistic approach to address this problem that includes addressing housing, but also livable wages and transportation. But first, my priority is to assist those who are on the verge of being evicted from their homes. Federal assistance for eviction protection is ending now, and people are still struggling to no fault of their own because of this pandemic. We need to implement an eviction foreclosure prevention program and provide short-term rent and utility assistance. Next, let's create a committee to oversee the city's affordable housing plan. This committee can hold the city accountable to that plan as the city approves future developments. We need to prioritize and create incentives for development of affordable and the missing middle housing. I'd also like to look at seriously using community land trusts to lower that cost. So I'll just conclude by saying that Arvada should be a welcoming city and not exclude those who work here from being able to live here.
Thank you. And Lisa, you're next.
Right, awesome. This is probably my favorite question, clearly, because I am a big housing policy nerd. So excited about this one. I believe housing should be the primary focus and the most pressing issue, and it is the most pressing issue for our community. I want us to focus on diversifying our housing stock to allow for more entry-level homes for low and moderate income families, while promoting innovative ideas like home sharing and supporting and educating people around additional dwelling units. It's a hard process to navigate. I know townhomes, apartments, and condos are above our price range, myself included. That is why I want to elevate community programs that promote renting to owning, as well as transitional and supportive housing for low-income families. If we do not focus on the transitional part of a housing challenge, then the people will currently be limited in the affordable housing units, meaning that the gap to leave affordable housing to being able to rent on their own is too big. We need to support that transition to free up some of that housing stock as additional units are being built. Additionally, I want to leverage the mixed use zoning areas to build out micro communities. These hyper-local mixed-use environments help diversify our housing supply by having units on the second and third floor while allowing for shorter commutes to those rental stores and restaurants. It's a great example. A great example of this would be Five Parks. It tackles issues that around the need for more housing, reduction of driving, and promoting bike and walk-friendly communities. Regarding, oh, I'm done. Dang. All right.
Thank you, Lisa. And Michael.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I love this question. As an expert in the implementation and design of mixed-use developments, I think there's a lot to unpack in this question. I kind of want to put it into two camps. The first one is transportation. This is a huge issue. We need to really look at first and last mile potential operations. We want to maximize the value out of our infrastructure investments like the G line. And I'd love to work with Shelley Cook to try and figure out why we can't get enough drivers through RTD to have full bus services to different parts of Arvada. I think that's a kind of a separate piece. But coupled with it is housing. Housing is a lot of things that are driving that. And we have construction defect laws that are affecting issues around the state that make it hard to build anything but rental product. I think, it's obvious that people want to live in Arvada, so we have an influx in demand. So with the supply and demand issues that we have to make some decisions. And I worry that if we impose restrictive policies in Arvada, then builders will just go elsewhere. And actually our housing stock will end up going up in value and expense rather than go down and stabilizing. The project that I would point to is one that I designed and led for 8 years is South Sloan's Lake. We've got 20% affordable housing. We also have some of the most expensive per square foot housing in Denver in that project. We have a mix of amenities, movie theaters, and streetscapes and parks. And we did all that through a metro district. So I think there are tools out there that will allow us to get a mix of all the things that the communities are looking for in Arvada as we try and fill out. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, that is the questions that we had collected earlier, and I do not see any in the chat. We have lots of comments in the chat, but I don't see any new questions. Does anybody want to ask them while you're here?
I'd just like to thank all the candidates for coming and talking to us. It was very informative.
Okay.
I'd like to ask one. How do you feel about height restrictions? Can we build taller buildings, or are we going to limit that like Boulder did? Everyone?
Okay, let's see. I guess, start over here. Let's have Susie go first.
Thanks, Mike, for the question. I think it's a pretty broad question, and it should be addressed on a development project by development basis and what makes sense for that specific part of town. If it's providing more equitable housing solutions, it should be something that we are considering. If it's something that's not going to disturb the historical integrity of someplace like Old Town, there's a lot of variables that go into that. But if it's something that makes a housing option or business dwelling more energy efficient or more affordable for homeowners, renters, or business owners to rent, then it's something that we would certainly want to consider. Thanks.
Okay, John, you're next.
Yeah, so good question. We've dealt with this significantly over the last couple of years with the adoption of our new land development code, which looked at various places in the city and what's the proper height for those places. And we have, with the new land development code, made some changes. Right down at I-70 in Wadsworth, potentially you can have 75-foot tall buildings, and in other places only 35-foot tall buildings are appropriate. So I don't think we should. I think we have already adjudicated this with all the public participation we got in the land development code. I don't believe we should give height exceptions in big numbers. And I certainly don't think we should give height exceptions for affordable housing like has been suggested in the past. I think, again, anybody who lives in affordable housing shouldn't be stigmatized by that, nor should they live in something that's any different than the rest of our members of our community live in. And so I think we've addressed this. I think each development does have the ability to develop as a PUD and ask for exceptions to the land development code if they're providing additional value. And so that process exists and could be utilized by any developer who wants to. So this is one I think we have gotten right, and we'll continue to get right, continue if we stay on our path.
Okay, thank you. And Michael.
Thank you. I think there's two parts to this question. So the first one is, as John mentioned, we've made updates and changes to the land development code that allow for some of these height variations that we wouldn't have had in the old code. So I think that that's sort of been sort of added to the code. So whenever that we see things like that on commission or we see it in council, it's a part of the new LDC. So it's sort of already a part of the process. The other side of it, though, is if we're looking at a variance. We looked at the Tremel Crow project right there on Grandview a year or so ago. That's a project where, like I do many times on Planning Commission, I see something where the developer's asking for something, and I look at it as an opportunity to negotiate with them. So they wanted a height variance to go higher. People didn't like that because you lose the view. So for me, I made the amendment and the request to say, let's make that top section affordable housing. That's something that we have identified in our comp plan that we'd like to see more of. There's no requirement for it, but maybe this is a good way to kind of get something for giving something. And I think variances like that, where we're looking at something that's outside of the existing code and zoning, are good opportunities to have those negotiations on commission and also at council.
Okay, thank you. And Lisa.
Don't all walk away at once. No, there are some aspects of a couple of the candidates that I agree and disagree with. I think we can leverage height bonuses for affordable housing. I think that is something that we talk about a lot to ensure that developers can still have their profit when they're taking on a risk of developing, but also providing some public service and public good of giving equitable housing out there. So I wouldn't be opposed to height restrictions, but again, to kind of what Susie had said, it depends on where it is. If it's detrimental to the environment or the character of a historic area, then maybe that is not the best place for it. So you kind of have to weigh it out back and forth between the two. So not against height restrictions. I think that it should be case by case, and depending on what, if there is affordable housing tied to that, that's a benefit too.
Okay, thank you. And Randy.
Great, thank you, Joyce. Yes, I would say that, it really is a case-by-case basis. And, there's instances where we really, we move here because we want the view. And that's part of our quality of life. So we need to make sure we're protecting our view shed. That is really important. We're making sure that we are protecting, the character of our different communities here in Arvada. And so height plays a big factor in that. So I, would advocate that we are, scrutinizing that on a case-by-case basis and looking at where that location is and what impact it will have on that local community.
Okay, thank you very much. We do have another question here, so put your listening ears on. Thank you for being here. I wonder about the Jeffco Parkway and what you see as its future, given that Broomfield is not in at this point and that studies about business have not panned out as hoped. And we'll start with Randy on that one.
Great, thank you for that question. Well, as I said in my questionnaire, I'm really concerned about how the project's benefits outweigh the costs, and in the question you stated that very, very precisely. I am also very concerned about the exposure of plutonium to construction workers and to our community. I live downwind from Rocky Flats, and so I'm thinking about that a lot. And I want to see the traffic studies to the area. I am concerned about generated traffic that could result from a new parkway, quite honestly. This induced traffic will have negative impacts on our community and our ability to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So I really want to be looking at it through those lenses as well.
Okay, thank you very much. And Lisa.
So there was a couple of variables that I had talked about when we look at the Parkway. One is about adequate funding now that we have someone that is pulling out of the agreement. The also is the outdated economic impact report. That was completed in 2018 with an estimation of $1.2 billion of economic impact. But we've seen this past year, almost 2 years now, how COVID has changed the landscape, the dynamic, the shopping, the behaviors of our population. So I think it's important for us just to do our due diligence and ensure how is that economic report outdated, what is new, what is different about that, and as well as traffic patterns. You know, I think that it's important if we're going to be investing in a three-way partnership that is very expensive, that we need to do our due diligence and ensuring that we have all of the updated data to include the new behaviors and trends of COVID.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. And Michael.
Thank you. So as a transportation and mobility designer, this is a fascinating question for me and an area that I'm very interested in for the future of our city. I believe strongly that regional beltways are important components of what allows a city to function and to circulate. This one is kind of funny because it's been on the books for so long. 1960s, I think this thing was first put into the books when we were looking at early planning stages in far west Arvada. So it's been around for a long time. I think that there's a couple of things that come to mind when I look at this, other highways projects around the country that didn't go so well, that maybe were implemented when they weren't really needed. So I think it's probably a good idea to look at some of the connections, some of the on-off ramps. You know, there's not really an ideal setup to get from 93 to C470, and I think that should be a more direct connection. And then what are those on-ramp locations, and how did the communities that are the most impacted benefited directly from this? One way that they should benefit, no matter how it's built, is that we have less regional traffic on local roads. I would assume that the engineers definitely got that right, but let's look at some of the more direct benefits, and maybe mobility is one of the things that they see. Maybe there's opportunities for looking at that holistically, but we are so far along this process. I mean, Broomfield has already gotten some land acquisitions through it. So it's not something we can just sort of casually walk away from. I think it requires everybody to get to the table and look for a good solution that's amicable. Thank you.
Thank you. And John, you're up.
Thanks, Joyce. Yeah, good question on the Beltway. You know, the plan for the Beltway with the three partners was that a consortium would build it in exchange for the tolling revenue, and that really was the only possible plan, given that the way across around the metro area. The cities or the county, nobody has the ability to just build the Beltway. So the Jefferson Parkway looked to be the most practical, and having been in planning for such a very, very, very long time, I think it's important because it would intercept a bunch of regional traffic that now is going down our neighborhood streets. And I think that's a good benefit to the voters, and particularly at no cost, which was the most recent plan and the most recent economic activity allowed. However, I'm also not opposed a different alignment for the Beltway, but it would require that the state step in and be part of it. And I don't see that happening. Barring either of those two, I think it's absolutely inevitable that Indiana Street will be widened to a couple of lanes each way. If you've been out there during rush hour, it is bumper to bumper traffic both ways for as far as the eye can see. And that's not a sustainable situation either. So whether you're building a Beltway next to Indiana or widening Indiana, I think the impacts are the same with regard to the environment. And I think we ought to pick whatever is the best solution, and particularly whatever is doable.
Okay, thank you very much. And Susie.
Great, thanks. So this question is interesting because we don't have a lot of information around the environmental aspect of what's actually going on underneath the soil in this part of the region, and even a little further north in the city of Arvada. I'm also interested in learning more about this process and if it benefits the residents of that part of town to make greater connectivity, that's what we should be focusing on, but not negating the environmental impacts it will have to neighbors who are already living there. What will this do to their property values? How will this impact them is going to be a huge priority, as well as not placing additional burdens on the already strapped city budget. With the latest assessment being from 2018, as we all know, everything has gotten more expensive. So what are the actual numbers that it would cost for us to participate in connecting that Jefferson Parkway piece in the Arvada region, but do the costs outweigh the benefits? And again, my main concern is regarding the plutonium factor, what that will impact for the entire region. How will we keep neighbors safe? Will it be safe for kids in schools in that area to be playing outside at recess during that construction process? All of these questions come to mind with the priority of keeping families safe in our community.
Okay, thank you very much. We do have one more question, and the question is there any way that the city can move away from sales tax, which is a regressive tax? And let's see, I think, take it away, John.
Thank you. My favorite question so far. So if the question, is there a way, I don't see any practical way that could happen. I also believe consumption-based taxes, which is what a sales tax is generally a pretty equitable way of taxing in a relatively flat way where everybody's got skin in the game. I do philosophically sympathize with the libertarian point of view, who somebody who asked this question must also have, which is that all taxes ought to be property taxes. And I'm not against that, but I don't see a practical way of getting there. And there would certainly be some unintended consequences of that, namely what appears to be one of our more pressing problems, which is housing affordability. So, doubling or tripling or quadrupling property tax, I don't think would make housing any more affordable. It would only make it worse. So I don't see it from a practical matter, although I think they're interesting discussions to engage in, and always willing to look at new ideas that may deliver better results.
Okay, thank you. Susie.
Yeah, great question. And of course, none of us like taxes. We would prefer there were no taxes for anything. But we do understand that some of those pieces are necessary for us to do basic city functions that we already aren't being able to meet. There are, almost $10 million worth of city projects just sitting on the shelf that we aren't able to complete because we don't have the necessary resources to do that. So moving away from a model that does provide some equability or some equity across all shopping levels of all investment levels for families coming into the community, I think does still make sense. Not to say that it's the best and only option, but I would like for us to find other ways to increase or find the resources necessary to complete the work that we already have built into our strategic plan.
Okay, thank you. Randy.
Great, thank you for the question again. It is an interesting question, and I think it's something worth looking at all options and how do we make more equitability in our community and help people that are struggling, and examine, do we eliminate certain types of sales taxes? So I think, maybe not eliminate all of them, but maybe some. So I think that is something we could explore and look at. I'm willing to have that conversation and hear from you on your ideas.
Okay, Michael.
Thank you. Yeah, Bruce, you're getting a lot of love for this question, buddy. I swear. Let's go get a beer and talk about maybe we can crowdsource all the funding that we need for infrastructure and healthcare, and we'll just have a fun time with it. But no, this is an interesting question, not one that I really expected, but I think it's a delicate balance that we strike when we look at our budgets and deficit, for different city expenditures, and the revenue that we get from sales tax is important. And I would think if we're not getting it there, we have to get it from somewhere else. And I think one of the things that attracts people to live in Colorado in general is that we have low property taxes. So I think we'd end up kind of upsetting the balance in one respect or another. But it's an interesting question, and Bruce, I'd love to meet up and talk more about it with you. Thanks.
Okay, and Lisa.
Thank you. There are, it is people that are of lower income tend to be impacted by higher percentages of those taxes, right? 7% for someone that makes $50,000 a year versus 100,000 is substantially different. What I would love to see is how we could find credits and exemptions for seniors, disabled, low income people. With that being said, we also need to be fiscally responsible. And to think of Susie's point, we have a laundry list of things that we need to do in this city. And if we're reducing some of that revenue, we need to figure out a different way to get that revenue. So all that to say is that, yes, I would support some tax exemptions or write-offs or credits, but we would also need to explore a way to offset that in another revenue stream.
Yeah, actually, my question may not have been phrased right. My question was really about additional sources of revenue that wouldn't rely on the sales tax so much, because low-income people pay a lot higher percentage of their income in sales tax. So it was really more about what are some additional and other sources of revenue that we could tap. But anyway, that just
I think you're gonna have to go on their website and ask that question again. Okay, one last question, and I think we'll call it quits. So what would you do to improve air quality in Arvada? And we'll start with Michael.
Thank you, Joyce. Good question. So a couple of things. The first thing is, I would encourage low carbon, sort of low atmospheric influence activities like cycling and walking. Let's make sure that we continue to make robust trail systems a priority for the city. Let's add to our bike facilities. Let's maybe look at share options where just some paint and plastic and you get additional roadway usage for cyclists. So that's one way. The other way, and this is kind of near and dear to my heart, if you follow me on social media, you know what I'm going to talk about. It's trees. Let's get more trees in our city. If we look at our climate here in Arvada and just in the Front Range in general, there's only 2 indigenous tree species here. It's cottonwoods and like gamble oaks, and they would grow in riverbeds. We have completely terraformed the area that we live in the Front Range. And so when we do that, we create a massive heat island issue, right? So one of the ways that we can mitigate that and at the same time improve air quality is to make sure that we're actually installing trees that create canopy, that clean the air, that have evapotranspiration benefits that cool it at the same time, and they create place and they shade those lovely trails that we can ride our bikes on. So really, it's about giving people options for moving around, making it a cool place to live, and ensuring that we have a robust tree canopy for people and animals alike. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. And Lisa.
Yeah, piggybacking off of what Michael said, actually, this is something we agree on, believe it or not, but reducing community car use, commuting and car use. But right now, of our budget, only $700,000 goes towards biking. Of the millions of dollars that we could be that is being spent on our roads. What I want to see is us to shift towards biking more. We don't have enough money in our budget system right now to really promote that. So we say we want to have more trails and more bikes, but it's not really showing that in our budget line item. So I would like to see us have more partnerships that we can get through Colorado Health Foundation, for example. They have Healthy Cities grants that we can use that matches the amount of money we use on our bike trails. We have 25 miles of missing sidewalks, to include my front yard, where it is not safe for people to walk. So we want to reduce air pollution and improve our air quality. We need to complete the circles and loops in our biking and walking systems so people feel more comfortable going to run errands, walking their kids to school, taking their dog for a walk. I think it's very important that we don't just say we want to be better in our environment and better stewards, but we actually put our money where our mouth is and transition some of that money towards biking and sidewalks. Thank you.
Thank you. And Susie.
Hey, look at this. We all love trees. We all love bikes. It is all good. So outside of those 2 components, What I would really like to see is, because I mean, you're not going to see a single mom of three biking to the grocery store and things like that. So we need to be more forward thinking about how we as a city are inviting either electric services, automated services, ride sharing, things like that, to get people to and from where they need to maybe reduce the number of vehicles on the city streets. And then as well, in addition to everything that both Mike and Lisa have mentioned, I'd like to see the city lead the way on trying to implement how we're adopting and being the example and the leader in the region for having our fleet, our vehicles be electric and be carbon neutral and be responsible. How are we investing in the future of Arvada through those modes of transportation? So when someone sees a City of Arvada vehicle going through town, they see it charging at a charging station, which we will build in the future. But I believe that that's also a huge component of what we can do to set an example and be good stewards of our environment. Thanks.
Thank you. And John.
Yeah, so again, I think we have some broad agreement here. I also believe that working on our pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure is probably the best way we can go about it. I will note that we just did approve a micro-mobility pilot project that will be kicking off next year, which with any luck, hopefully will prove successful and will be expanded to the whole city. Honestly, I would go even further. There are many, many devices that are available today that weren't available even 2 or 3 years ago. Electric powered, everything from one wheels to electric unicycles to golf carts to any number of type of devices that are electrically powered and can get you and do the job that your 4,000-pound car currently does. I would certainly like to see those all become legal and welcomed and be allowed. I really believe for quality of life, a least restrictive environment that's necessary is what's best. And I think that would help create that environment, at least with transportation. And I think that would be the best thing we can do to improve our air quality.
Okay, thank you. And Randy.
Great, thank you. I appreciate and support all the bike enthusiasts that we've got out there. And I myself am a biker, but I do want to also recognize that there are people in our community who cannot bike, who have disabilities. And so I want to emphasize too, when we're thinking about our transportation, we need to think about it holistically. And one key part of that is electrification. And that's not just for our vehicles, but also for our homes and our businesses. And there is going to be a good chunk of state money coming in line after some bills that were passed this last legislative session that we need to be first in line for to get that money for electrification of our homes, businesses, and vehicles. And so I would really be prioritizing that because that will do a lot to help us improve our air quality and help us fight climate change.
Okay, thank you very much. At this point, I think we've all been sitting long enough, and maybe it's time to go out and get on our bikes. But I want to thank all the candidates and all the people who have attended this forum today for participating. And I'd like to remind you to read the blog on our APA website, where the candidates have submitted answers to about 10 questions that we had asked earlier. And that's at arvadsforprogressiveaction.org. And you'll just choose the political action drop down and read the blog. Remember, we have the election is November 2nd, and as Karen said, the ballots will drop in early October, so it's time to really kind of read up on everything. And remember that candidates always need help and always need money. So if you've heard some things here that you really like, I would suggest you reach out to those candidates and get to work and get your checkbook out if you can. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. See ya.
Thank y'all so much.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Take care.
Coming.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
See ya.